Here's a picture of a coral reef. You know, the largest reef in the world is off the coast of Australia. It's called the Great Barrier Reef. I had a call from a church in Brisbane. They said, "Do you want to come preach over here?" I said, "I need to pray about this." He said, "Yes." I took my whole family to Australia. My daughter and I got to go scuba diving at the Great Barrier Reef. It was incredible. During World War II, some of the reef was destroyed by ships and anchors and bombs and stuff like that. So the environmentalist wackos went out there to see how fast it grows back. They watched the reef grow for 20 years. It was a government project. Based on a 20-year study, they said the reef is less than 4,200 years old. Oh, okay. Well, then I have a question. If the earth is millions of years old, why don't we have a bigger reef someplace? Why would the biggest reef on earth be less than 4,200 years old? I have a theory about that. I bet you know what it is, don't you? You can figure it out. Okay. Here's a picture of Niagara Falls. The textbook says, boys and girls, the rocky ledge above Niagara Falls has been eroding for 9,900 years. Now, how do they know that? Well, it's pretty interesting. The rocks are breaking off the edge. All waterfalls do that. You know, rocks break off the edge, and the waterfall eats its way backwards. The water flows one way, the waterfall moves the other way in response to the erosion. They've studied Niagara Falls pretty carefully for the last 200 years. They say it's moving back 4.7 feet a year. Interesting. Well, when Charlie Lyell went there in 1840, he said Niagara Falls is obviously back here, and it quite obviously started up here by Lewiston, New York. It's moving back down the gully. Charlie Lyell said, "I think it took 10,000 years to go that far." Now, he said that purposely to try to discredit the Bible. Charlie Lyell hated the Bible. And that's the book that destroyed the faith of Charles Darwin. We get into more of that on videotape number 4. But Lyell, the people, he said it took 10,000 years. The people that lived there said, "Hey, it erodes much faster than that." But he didn't listen to him. He had his theory. He had his agenda to push, okay? He wanted to discredit the Scriptures. Now, the fact is, the water goes over the falls into a gorge called the Niagara Gorge. I was just there a couple of weeks ago. That gorge is 7.5 miles long. All right, this textbook says a simple calculation shows it's been 9,900 years worth of erosion. Well, it's not quite that simple, okay? You see, Niagara Falls is right here. It used to be further north by Lewiston. It's moving south, quite obviously, because the water flows north. I got a question now. If the earth is millions of years old, why hasn't it eroded all the way back to Lake Erie? Why is Niagara Falls right there? Well, I have a theory about that. Here's my theory. I believe about 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood. As the flood water was running off, whoosh, about half of that gully washed out in 20 minutes. So it looks like it took 9,900 years by the textbook. Now, they forgot the flood. They also forgot to get the right numbers, okay? See, if they had divided right, it would have been 8,400 using the 4.7. But, you know, public school textbook, what do you expect? Okay. When it rains, 30% of the water runs into the ocean. The rest evaporates or soaks into the ground. Well, as it runs into the ocean, it brings with it mineral salts off the ground. It washes salts off the ground called mineral salts. The oceans are getting saltier every day because of the distillation process of sunlight evaporating water out and, you know, minerals washing in and water coming out. The minerals don't come out, just the water. Today, the oceans are 3.6% salt. They could have done that in less than 5,000 years. I was in a debate one time, and this atheist said, "Hovind, would you please tell me how the freshwater fish survived Noah's flood?" I said, "Well, sir, aren't you assuming the flood was salt water?" He said, "The ocean is salt water." I said, "Well, yeah, it is today. I think during the flood it's probably mostly fresh water." He said, "Well, how did the saltwater fish survive?" I said, "Well, there probably weren't any." He said, "The ocean is full of saltwater creatures." I said, "Well, yeah, it is today." I said, "I think what happened over the last 4,400 years, some animals have gradually become adapted to salt water. And today we have freshwater alligators and freshwater crocodiles and saltwater crocodiles. And they probably had a common ancestor, a crocodile." He said, "That's evolution." I said, "Oh, it is not. Going from a freshwater croc to a saltwater croc is a minor change compared to what you believe. So you believe they changed from a rock to a croc. Now, there's a major change for you folks. Yes, sir. How many of you have ever gone into a cave and the guide said, don't touch the formations, they take millions of years to form? They all have the same story, right? You go to Carlsbad, they'll say, yep, it took 250 million years to these formations in here. They say tiny drops of water slowly build these formations. One guy said it takes 1,000 years to grow from 1/10 of a centimeter to 10 centimeters, up to 2.5 inches. Maximum be 2.5 inches per 1,000 years. Well, I don't think so. Here are some 50-inch long stalactites growing under the Lincoln Memorial, built 1922. Here's a bat covered up with flowstone before it could rot. It doesn't take millions of years for that stuff to form. Here's 2-inch stalactites growing off a refrigeration shed in Pensacola, Florida. There's a building in Indiana, it's only 40 years old. The basement is full of huge flowstone formations in 40 years from water dripping through the limestone. Here's a mine in Australia that was closed down for 55 years. When they opened it up to just check to see how it's doing, there were huge cave formations that formed in 55 years. There are 2 people inside that circle to give you an idea how big this is. Here's a pipe that was dripping water up at Herbert Field near Pensacola at Eglin Air Force Base. Made a 13-inch stalactite in 7 years. Underneath on the ground was a stalagmite. Everybody kept tripping on it, and so they broke it off and gave it to me. It's in my museum. Stalagmite formed in 7 years. Here's a parking garage in Texas. Brand new parking garage, built in 1997. It was making stalagmites on students' cars parking under it. So they put up a drip pan to catch the water. A guy in Wyoming had a hot mineral spring on his property in Thermopolis, Wyoming. And so he stuck a pipe in the ground back in 1903. The water came out the top of the pipe, ran down the sides. They called it the teepee fountain, kind of a natural fountain. Everybody thought, wow, that's cute. He's got a fountain in his yard. Well, slowly over the years, the water, as it ran down the side of the pipe, evaporated, some of it, leaving behind mineral deposits. How many have seen those mineral deposits in your sink, okay? Well, the guy died, and they left the pipe sticking in the yard. It's now been there for 100 years. Here it is, about 6 years ago. That would take some lime away to scrub that clean, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Sure would. It does not take millions of years to form those things. That's 100 years worth. The guy down the street started one later. It's not quite as big. But folks, it doesn't take a long time. Did you know at the current rate of erosion, the continents are going to erode flat in 14 million years? We have mudslides, landslides, of course, erosion, abrasion, exfoliation. Does the ground ever fall up? It's always down, isn't it? Sedimentary rock's always on its way down anyway. You might get igneous rock coming up, volcanoes. Did you know they're telling us we got fossils in sedimentary rock that are 300 times older than the current erosion rate would allow for? All you got to do is fly out west. 2 days ago, I flew back from Grand Canyon, flew out west. You just look out the window of the plane, folks. It looks like there's erosion marks every place down there in places that hardly ever rain. We cover Grand Canyon in video 4 also. If you think that river made that canyon, you need to watch video number 4. Erosion marks all over this world are evidence of massive flooding on this planet. And we could spend all day on that. We cover more in video 6. A couple more things and we'll quit. The oldest writings in the world are about 5,000 years old. Well, that's interesting. Why would the oldest writings be 5,000 years old? Why does the Chinese calendar say this is the year 4704 right now? With Noah. The Chinese calendar, or the Hebrew calendar, said this is the year 5764. They think they started with Adam with their calendar. Don't trust the Egyptian calendar, by the way. That one's greatly exaggerated. Get the book Evolution Cruncher, a 900-page book for $5. Go to our website. It's a great book with lots of good stuff on evolution. Why would the oldest reliable historical records be less than 6,000 years old? I have a theory about that. I think the Bible is absolutely correct. I think the evidence for a young earth is overwhelming. The evidence for an old earth is minimal. And like the coins in the box, you have to go by the limiting factors. Each one of the evidences for a young earth would have to be overcome. Each single one would stand independently.